Well, welcome everybody to this webinar series on storytelling. And it's my great pleasure as General Secretary of Churches Together in England, in partnership with the Lutheran churches, to introduce to you a real dear friend of mine, Paul Faulkner, who is a spoken word specialist, someone that I've worked with over a number of years. And I think you're going to find what he shares today a great blessing. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Paul Faulkner. Thank you, Paul.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mike. Yeah, really good to see you. So I'll ask for now that if you guys keep your microphones on mute. For now, there's going to be a chance to do some writing and some sharing later on. And but for now, yeah, if you keep yourself on mute, you can keep your cameras on or off, whatever you prefer for the moment. But when we come together, we're going to do, yeah, as I said, we're going to do some writing later on in some breakout groups. And so it'd be great if you could keep your cameras on for that. But for now, if you want to take it off, it's fine. I don't really mind. Brilliant. So yeah, as Mike said, my name is Paul Faulkner. I am currently, I live in Blackpool and I live and work in Blackpool. I'm originally from South London, lived in Kent for a couple of years, but for the last 5 years, my wife and I have been living in Blackpool, northwest of England, right on the coast, 3 minutes away from the beach. However, I'm currently in Germany. My wife's German, Hannah, and it was her birthday yesterday. She turned 30, and so we're back at her mum's house in Germany. So yeah, greetings from Germany, or ich grüße dich von Deutschland. Ich grüße euch von Deutschland. My German's good, not great, but yeah, we get by. And so yeah, in terms of myself, so I graduated a couple of years ago with a BA in theology and youth work from Moorlands Bible College, and I'm currently writing a master's in social work on spirituality and mental health. So I'm working in adult mental health at the moment. And but yeah, in terms of my spoken word writing history, I sort of came across spoken word about 15 years ago. That's when I first started writing pieces to be shared. And yeah, I've done lots of different events. As Mike said, we worked together a couple of times at New Wine Conference in the summer. That's been really good. I've done things for local churches. I've worked with schools, writing with them and working on performances and creating videos for them. I'm going to show you some examples of my work later on today. But yeah, today is all about the art of spoken word, so writing spoken word. And I don't want to sort of take over and make it all about me or all about my work. I really want to hear from you guys and to give you an opportunity to do some writing, hopefully give you some helpful pointers and talk about my sort of process in writing and how you can use that. But we're gonna look at a very, very brief history of spoken word. I'm not a historian. Yeah, as I said, I sort of just stumbled on spoken word around 15 years ago. And that was mostly through YouTube. And I'm going to share some of the channels that I looked at and some sort of names that you may or may not know later on. Later on in the talk. But yeah, I just sort of stumbled on YouTube. I listened to quite a few artists and just started writing myself. But by spoken word, sort of by definition, for me, in my the way that I come to understand it, is that it's a poem which is designed to it's designed and written to be shared out loud. And I think it's really important to hear that we're not poems sort of designed to be on the page or to be read, but actually they're designed to be heard, and then with that also designed to be delivered. So they're designed to be performed. And you may have heard the name performance poetry before, sort of as another name for spoken word poetry. And so that oral tradition of sharing things outwards, performing and speaking things out, has sort of existed for almost as long as humans have existed. We used it a lot in terms of sharing, memorizing things, sharing history, sharing stories, sharing culture. We've had that oral tradition of speaking things out and doing it in such a way that there's a sort of a rhyme and a rhythm to it so that people can remember that, take it on and share that further. And so in ancient Greece, the lyrics have been found which were very sort of similar to modern day spoken word poetry. And in Africa, performance poetry is said to have existed since prehistoric times. But the genre sort of today, as we see and experienced it, really developed in the early 20th century. And so it played a big part in the States, over in the United States. And so it played a big part in the civil rights movement. And it was a great way for sort of Black people at the time to share their views, to share their political views, their political stance, and also to stir up vision and to pass on the message when in that fight for their rights there. And so you've hopefully have heard, or probably likely have heard, Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And if you listen to that, there's sort of an element of spoken word and the way that he delivers that, and the way that he, some of the writing that he does. There's elements of spoken word in that. And so, the modern movement as we see it today sort of really started out of that. But now we see it everywhere. You've seen on different adverts on TV. I feel like you can't really go a couple of adverts without hearing someone do a spoken word. Now, that's because it's such a great way of communicating. It's a really great way to get an idea across. And so, yeah, that's my very brief history. I'm sure you could Google more and find out more. We can chat about it in the questions later on if I can bring you anything else. But yeah, a very, very brief history of spoken word as we sound it. But as a Christian and as a believer, I grew up in church. I'm currently attend King's Church in Blackpool. They help lead the youth and children's work there. But as my faith plays a massive part, and I really believe that creativity comes from God. And I want to share a Bible verse with you, which is really sort of a foundation of my spoken word writing. And I'm going to explain a bit further into it in a moment. But the verse is Ephesians 2, verse 10. And I'll read it. It says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them." So that's Ephesians 2, verse 10. And there's a key word in there which I really want to hone in on. And the word is workmanship. I put it in bold on the screen there. And that's sometimes translated as handiwork or masterpiece. And so it's saying, for we are his masterpiece. We are his handiwork. We are created by him, meaning God in that sense. And if you go back to the Greek, the original language that this was written in by the Apostle Paul, the word for workmanship there is poema. So poema, I think, that is a correct Greek pronunciation, poema. And you may notice there that that word sort of relates to the word poem, and actually it does. That's the root of the word poem. And so when we read that Bible verse again, when we go back into it, it's saying that we are his poem. We could translate it like that. I'm taking a slight liberty with the Greek, I hope you don't mind, but we can translate it as saying we are God's poem. You are God's poem. And I love that. And as a poet, when I first came across this and saying, so I know when I write, my poems are an expression of me. They're something that I put out and then it's linked to me forever. And so to hear that I am God's poem, that I am of him, that he created me to I'm an expression of God. I am linked to God, and that I'm created to be a blessing and to go out and do good works. That really stuck with me and really struck me. And I want to encourage you that as today, from today and throughout all the writing that you do, everything that you create, I want you to remember that you are an expression of God. You are God's poem. And so the things that you can create and the things that you will create will go out and honor him and are linked to his identity. And so with that, I want to share with you one of my spoken word pieces that I wrote. So I wrote this piece. This is sort of a very high-end production piece. So I was paid to create this piece by a church in Burnley. We shot it at an art studio. There was a crew of sort of 4 or 5 people there. And so, and then the editing process went through for about a week. There was a back and forth on the writing and like getting the right piece right. Yeah, getting the piece right for that. And so there's lots of consultation. And so this is one end of the spectrum. I'm going to show you the other end of the spectrum in a moment, but this is one end of the spectrum of a spoken word piece that that you could create, and one that I created. So yeah, the piece is called Masterpiece, and it's based around Ephesians 2 verse 10, but I will hit play and let you listen to that.
You're just another number, just another unremarkable statistic. Your mum might try and twist it and say that you're special, but really, you're forgettable. Keep telling whatever lies you need to make it seem bearable, because the truth is, it's incredible that you ever hoped. When at your core, you're just another grain of sand on the seashore. Just another boy destined for life on the shop floor. Just another girl to use and then ignore. Just another baby that no one ever asked. Mate, if that's the truth, then life's got a lot to answer for, and I'll be kicking down doors till I find a better answer. Because I don't feel like a statistic. I am not here by chance or because my mother's deadbeat had a bungled encounter. So let me stand up and be counted. Let me say that I'm going to amount to more than you expected, so the next time I'm rejected, I can reject it. And what about you? I see you there in your seat. Your mouth a palace of malice, deceit, two-faced lies on every demon retweet, defeat after defeat, causing you to retreat till cuts on your arm become your only release. I wish I could tell you. I wish I could break through the internal monologue that holds you down. I wish I could drown out the sounds of your self-condemnation, take you by the hand and pull you out that wasteland. I wish I could tell you. I wish that for your sake, I could cause the earthquake that would shake you awake and give hope to your heartache. I wish I could say stop. Wait. You are not a mistake. In fact, there is one who sees you as something to celebrate, who went out of his way to create the stars for you to enjoy like an old school mixtape. One who can bear the weight of your self-destruction, who looks at the mess and says, I won't push that button because I need you for something. You may not have seen it coming, but you were made for something. You weren't just made, but chosen, woven into this very moment to be who only you can be. You see, the one that I speak of doesn't just make, but is maker. Doesn't just create, but is creator. He is the artist, the architect, the expert inventor. Before it all began, he was there at the center, pulling together people and purpose, then sending them out to do good works and uncover what they're made of. So if you think about it, there's nothing to be afraid of because you were created in his image. This world is his showroom and you're the main exhibit. So take this as your chance to start living without limit, to pick up your brushes and paint with the artist, to head to the streets and dance where it's darkest, to see the broken mended, to see wars end in peace. This is it, your commission and release, to go out and live life as his masterpiece.
Bro. Oh yeah, there's a slight advert there you can ignore, but Hayes is great, but yeah. So yeah, that was a piece that I created, as I said, very high end. It was a paid for production. Yeah, as I said, lots of people involved in that. And I'm very aware that the majority of us and the majority of you won't have the resources to produce something like that. If you do, fantastic. I totally encourage that. That's great. I think if you can, the standard that you can get it to, go for it. But if you're in maybe a smaller local church, if you don't necessarily have a budget or you don't necessarily have people with the technical abilities to put something like that together, that is totally okay, because spoken word, it can be performed in lots of different ways. And I've done it in lots of different ways. Like I said towards the start, I've done sort of big conferences and like church on a Sunday morning. So I'm actually going to share a piece that I wrote for church on a Sunday morning, and it's called As He Hangs There. And this piece, so yeah, I really like it. But this piece, when I performed it the first time, it was myself. It was sort of during the service, as part of, I think it was for one of our Easter celebrations a couple of years ago. And the way that I performed it, there was no sort of backing track, no fancy lights or anything like that. It was me on the stage with a notebook, and I read it out to the congregation. And so I'm gonna read it for you now. But yeah, I'll do that. I'm gonna explain a bit more after that. As he hangs there on that cross, I can't help but wonder, does he know what he's doing? Does he know who he's doing it for? He says he knows me, but clearly he has no idea. And I fear that his action will end in regret. I mean, if we had just met once, he would know that actually, I'm not worth it. I never have been. I was never comfortable in my skin, always been too fat or too thin, never really fit in, and yet there he is, calling me to him, saying I'm forgiven and can let go of my sin, but still I'm wondering, does he really know me? Is he aware of the lies I've shared or the times I've not cared? And I swear, if he knew what I did to my ex, there's no way he'd still show interest. And yet, he hangs there. His eyes saying he knows me, has known me longer than I dare believe. His mouth saying he forgives me, gives me more than I could dare receive. His scars, his hands, his feet, the hole in his side, telling me how he loves me. Deep, high, wide, and that all that's left is for me to decide. Decide that if he cried, died, and was crucified for who I am, then who I am doesn't have to be defined by how broken I feel inside, but rather by his death, by his life, who he is, Jesus Christ. Real. So yeah, hopefully you can see that obviously there's a difference there in production value. There's a difference there in sort of the amount of preparation. Like I said, that first piece, the masterpiece, took weeks of writing, weeks of editing, and to get it all together was like sort of a big production involving 5 or 6 people. That piece, As He Hangs There, was me writing a couple of weeks of writing, then editing, and then just delivering on a stage quite simply. But hopefully, I can't really see your reactions, but hopefully you would see that there's an impact that can be had in both of those. And it comes down to the performer and the performance and what you're able to give out as in terms of your writing and your delivery as well. And so, yeah, regardless of whether you can do it on a big stage with lots of production and all that sort of things, or if it's just you literally on a stage, maybe someone playing piano behind you, or just you with a microphone reading out something that you've written, that you've poured yourself into, then that can still have an impact on people and still can really tell a story and move people. And so, oh, we've got something in the chat. Oh yeah, feel free to put in the chat. Thank you very much, Mike. But yeah, feel free to put in the chat. There's going to be some time for questions in a little bit. But I want to, what I want to do next is give you some of sort of an insight into my process, and then we're actually going to do a bit of live editing as well on a piece that I'm working on currently. And then I really want to use the majority of this time to give you opportunities to write. And we're going to go into some groups later on, as I said, and I'll be moving around those groups, hearing ideas and sort of helping you hopefully to sharpen up your process. But yeah, I wanted to sort of break down my process for you. And it was a bit strange for me to do this, if I'm honest. I feel as a creative, and some of you guys may be creatives and have written things and done things already, and we all have different processes, and so I just sort of go for it. And so it was actually my sister, who I'm really grateful for. She was like, I spoke to her about it. She was like, you do have a process and you do work things through. It's just that you don't necessarily articulate that. And so work that through. I was able to chat that through with her and was able to get it down. Okay, so this is what I think my process is. And yeah, as I said, we can have some questions on that later on. But yeah, here's the breakdown. And so the first stage for me is listening. And as I said, when I was a bit earlier, I sort of stumbled onto spoken word. I really got into it around the age of 15. And at that time, I was just listening to lots of different writers, lots of different artists, and listening to lots of rap music as well. And I was just sort of engaging in the word and listening to words and listening to how other people put their ideas across. And it really inspired me to go out and create myself. And I think that should be the case for all of us. I think there are things that can come out of us, but actually listening to other people, listening how they play with words, how they use rhymes, how they put things out there, can really inspire us and move us to say, oh, okay, oh, this is something that I want to put out, or I'm going to use that type of rhyme structure, I'm going to use that idea. And I would genuinely say a lot of, pretty much, no, all my best writing, I would say, has come when I've engaged and have been listening to other creatives, because I don't think we don't create in isolation. We may create in isolation, but that creativity is fed by listening to and engaging with the world around us, with other people, with ideas and with different thoughts. And so I would, really encourage you just to be listening. It doesn't necessarily have to be to spoken word or rap music, or it might be lyrics, it might be going for a walk, but be listening and be taking things in and saying, okay, how can I use these ideas? How can I then put these ideas down onto a page and get them out there? And so, yeah, that for me is step one. And it sort of carries throughout my entire process. I don't put numbers on these because I think there's something that they're always sort of rolling through. The second thing that I wanted to write down is, or second sort of part of my process is, write what you know and what you feel. If you look at the pieces that I've written, you will find, if you sort of go through my back catalogue, that the majority of them are about my faith, because that's something that I know, that's something that I feel. I'm not sort of commenting on other people's faith. I don't do that. I comment on my relationship with Christ, how I've experienced it and what he's done within me. And I also, try to be authentic to some of my community and to my voice. So, for example, a couple of years ago, with the tragic passing of George Floyd in the States and the movement that was spurred around Black Lives Matter, at that time I was angry, I was frustrated, I was really aware of these feelings, and so I put them down. I wrote a couple of pieces, and some of them have gone out and been shared. Some pieces I kept to myself because I was like, oh, that's just what I'm feeling. I want to sort of work that out as part of cathartic process for me. But that's what I was feeling. So those pieces are angry. If you look at them, you're like, oh wow, Paul was angry at that time, and I was, and that's what came out. And so that's what I want to encourage you to do. I write poems for my wife for her birthday every year. So it was her birthday yesterday for those of you who joined us a bit later, which is why I wrote a piece for her, and that one is super soppy and lovey-dovey, and I'm not going to share it with you because it was for her. But when I wrote that piece, I was thinking about my wife, and so all that feeling of the joy and of the love that is in our relationship came out. And so that piece is like really fun and really light, and it's because I try to write what I am feeling. Be authentic to yourself. If you want to write something funny, write something funny. If you want to write something serious, write something serious, but write and connect to your emotion and to your feeling. When you do that, I think the authenticity comes out, and you're able to connect with that emotion when you deliver as well. We're gonna look at delivery sort of later on in the second part of what we do. And so write what you know and what you feel. I feel that's really important. I write often about, for me, sort of my main topics that I look at are around my racial identity as a Black man living in the UK, and my faith. Those are sort of the two biggest things that I write on, and I've been asked to write on as well. Okay, the next thing that I want to sort of hammer down is edit, edit, edit. I went on a writing course a couple of years ago, which really helped my process and really helped me sort of with what I do. And there was just a massive emphasis on editing, 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 editing. Putting something down is getting something down on paper, I think, is really important, and getting the ideas out of your mind and onto the page is important. But then looking at that and then saying, okay, how can I make this into the best thing that it can be, and how can I make it really intentionally a spoken word and something to be delivered and performed. And I think actually this is a really, really key difference between a poem or a preach even and a spoken word. Their spoken words are intentionally designed to be performed, to be heard, and to be delivered. And so to make something, to get something to that level requires an editing process. It requires you going through and saying, okay, I've got this down, this captures an emotion, this captures a feeling, but does this then communicate that feeling to somebody else? How will they feel hearing that? How will they understand the message that I'm trying to get across? And so when I'm writing, I'm also looking for, okay, does this have a rhythm? Does it flow? Does it bounce? Am I thinking about the next word? If I say something and then does it flow into the next line, or does it feel sort of quite jarring and quite abrupt on that? And that all comes through the editing process, going through again and again and again, starting from the top and going through, okay, is this piece the best that it can be? And I'm of the opinion that no piece is ever really finished. I know some people, some different creators differ on that, but so for example, that As He Hangs There piece is finished in the sense of I performed it and it's done and it captured that, and it was done in that moment of time. But I love going back and tweaking things, and that might be because I'm a bit older. Maybe I've learned some new words and I want to include them, or maybe my relationship to the spoken word has changed, and so I'm like, oh, actually, I think I've changed this thinking, and so I'm actually going to tweak this spoken word a little bit. I'm a massive fan of doing that. I try to keep sort of the original versions as a snapshot of the time that they were written in, but I'm all about sort of going back through and editing and playing with things just to see if I can make it sort of better capture what the idea that I want it to get across. And so with that in mind, I want to show you a piece that I'm currently writing, and this is an unedited piece, and even now I copied and pasted it into a slideshow, and then I was like, oh, there's some things that I instantly want to change, but I thought I'm going to leave it for now so that you can sort of see the process that I would go through doing that. And yeah, hopefully this will help. So I'll read it out for you. This is a piece, it's not named yet. I think it's about breath. And so I'm calling it, it's about breath. And so I'm calling it breath so far, but it's not named because it's not finished. Like I said, it's unedited. And so I'll read it for you, and then I'm going to go through some of the things that I would change sort of straight away or edit. It's incredible, isn't it? This constant stream of near silent salvation slipping softly through these slightly parted lips. The eclipsing uncharted mist, the accompanying melody of every heartbeat symphony, that steady struggle which invades the steepest of slumbers, the signaling sound that life prevails, even if only for one more breath. Cool, lots of words there, and looking at that, quite like it might have, there were some sounds there that I was not happy with as I just delivered that, and so straight away from the first line, I'm looking, it's incredible, isn't it? I'm like, I don't need to say, isn't it? I just like it's incredible. I don't need to sort of emphasize that, and so I drop that and say it's incredible. This constant stream of near silent salvation, and I can hear that straight away. It gives me a bit more of a pause. So it's incredible. I can add an emphasis on that pause. This constant stream of near silent salvation. And then looking at the sounds, they're slipping softly through these slightly parted lips. Again, straight away I'm hearing slipping softly. It's hard for me to say, it's hard for me to deliver. But if I change those two words round, so if I go softly slipping through these slightly parted lips, I don't know if you can hear that, but for me instantly I'm like, oh, that sounds better. So it's incredible. This constant stream of near silent salvation softly slipping through those slightly parted lips. And even that word those, I'm going to drop that as well. And so this is a live sort of me just going through this. I've not prepared this in any sense. Like, this is a piece that I'm writing and I picked that up, but already that first line, I'm like, there's a couple of changes. I've written this down. I was quite happy with it when I wrote it, but coming back, stepping back from a day and being able to go back into it again, I'm like, oh, there's 3 changes there in that first line already. It's incredible. This constant stream of near silent salvation, softly slipping through slightly parted lips. And hopefully that sounds better to you and to your ears than it did in the first instance. And you can see sort of that bit of that process. I'm looking for words that I might drop because they're not necessary, don't add to the story, don't add to what I'm trying to say. I'm looking for how to make the sounds, give the sounds more of a bounce and more of a rhythm and make them easier for me to communicate. I'm also looking for where I can add in pauses and emphasis and things that will really allow the words to I guess saturate the listener and really get a hold of that. And so I'm not going to do the rest because we'll be here all day, and because it's quite wordy. But yeah, hopefully that shows you a little bit of my process and a little bit of, okay, what I would be looking for when I am writing and when I'm going back through and editing. And so yeah, I really encourage you to, yeah, edit, and edit, yeah, keep editing. And then the final sort of part of my process is to connect. And so I would say I connect initially, normally, with a smaller group of people. And so usually my wife is one of my first sort of, like she's the first one who hears the things that I've written. And then my sister, who is a writer as well, and so she's like got a writer's ear, and so she can come through that. And so I would really, and yeah, those are the sort of 2 that I go through initially to just sort of say, do you get what I'm trying to say here? How does this sound to you? Because I might be thinking one thing and try to communicate one thing, but somebody else might hear that and hear something completely different. And so it's always really helpful to have just a couple of people that you trust and that you love and who will be honest with you to say, okay, actually, I didn't quite get that, or I love this idea, or do you think you should maybe explain that a little bit more? Connecting with that small group of people. And then further than that, connect and share it wider. As I said, spoken word pieces are designed to be performed and they're designed to be heard. And we're going to look at that a little bit later on when we get after we've done our small groups and done a bit of writing. But at this sort of juncture, I want to take a pause and yeah, ask for any questions. So you've sort of heard my process, you've seen a couple of my pieces. I'll explain what we're going to do. We're going to go into some small groups in just a moment, and then you're going to have the opportunity to do some writing for yourself. I'll come round to those different groups, and then we'll come back in and we'll work a little bit on delivery as well. But yeah, at this juncture, are there any questions from anyone? You can put them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourselves and yeah, speak out loud, up to you, however you feel like it. Thank you, Kevin, for your comments.
Paul, could I have a word?
Yeah, of course.
How do you feel about? I'm not all that creative, but I can usually speak something all right. So if I use your piece, how does that work? Do you feel that's okay?
I think it's fine. So I'm not sort of precious about my pieces. I think I would always ask the creative, so whoever's made the piece, I think it's really important to give people credit and really important to ask them to do that. And I would generally say, I'm not saying this to you, but I think it's really important to pay people for their work. So if they've created something for you or they've done something for you, then to use that. But a lot of my pieces are free to access and free to use. So if you did want to use one of my pieces, David, yes, you can do that, and I can I'll put my email into the chat towards the end, and if you've got any other questions or anything like that, or a piece that I've used today, you can ask me about that. I'll do that.
Thank you.
But no problem. We've got Anna Hayden. Is there any kind of structure or techniques that you use in this kind of writing? Well, no. Essentially, Anna, to be as unhelpful, slightly unhelpful answer, but the answer for me is no, not really. The way that I tend to write, and so others may have different answers to this, and this is fine, but I try, because I write about feeling, I write about, so yeah, I write based on feelings and sort of what I'm connecting with at the time. And so a lot of it's just sort of like, let me get this idea down and like sort of vomit this down. And then it's the editing process where I really will sharpen that up and say, okay, can I make this something that can be engaged with and heard by lots of people? And what I'm going to do as later on, I'll put some links. I'm going to show you some links to some other spoken word artists, and you'll see that there's a real sort of breadth of delivery and a real sort of breadth of structures and a real breadth of ideas that people use when they come out with it. And so I wouldn't want to say that you need to be pinned down to a certain structure or a certain idea of what you're creating, but that's where the listening comes in, because yeah, you sort of begin to sort of understand the scope and the variety of different ways that you can create in this way, which is bro. No worries. Rebecca Yates is asking, could I ask about your congregation? Do you find this accepted by all ages, ethnicities, genders, etc.? Yeah, I generally have. I've not really had anyone say to me, oh, I didn't really get it, or our congregation, I'll talk about my church. So our congregation is around 30% Filipino, where we live in Blackpool. It's related to the hospital, which is nearby. But yeah, it's really cool. And so there's a sort of around 30% of our congregation who English isn't necessarily their first language, or maybe their English isn't, at the same, they're not as proficient as in English as some native speakers would be. But so when I'm writing for church and when I'm writing for a congregation, I often think about, okay, yeah, who am I writing for? How is this going to be accepted? How is this going to be heard by them? Am I using words? So for example, that breath piece, I used it here because I'm working on it currently and you guys are wanting to be creative, but actually I probably wouldn't I'd perform that for other spoken word artists. That's what I'm thinking that I would use that for. But generally, it's quite a complex piece. There's lots of ideas flying through, and if you're not used to the format, you wouldn't really engage with that. So the As He Hangs There piece, for example, that I used earlier, that's a lot more simple. And so yeah, thinking about your audience and thinking about who's going to consume this and how will they engage with that. Really hope that answers that question. Is it Ola?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. I just want to find out, what do you tend to use this? Is it mainly during all age talk or even in your sermon when giving sermons?
Yeah, great question. So I use it sometimes during sermons. Sometimes we use it to introduce a sermon or to introduce a series of sermons. I've been asked before. So for the next few months, we're going to be talking about the idea of Jesus is, which is what we're doing at our church in the moment. I will write a piece on Jesus is, and so it's something that can get people thinking about that, sort of spark the ideas of what's going on. But yeah, you can use it in all age services. I work a lot with young people. And so what I've done before is write a piece with the young people to say, okay, we've heard this message or we've understood this. Now we're going to create something around it so that we can perform that for other people to hear, but also so that it takes root in us and so that we're able to have processed what we've learned. And so, yeah, whatever you feel, I use it often in worship as well. I've got some sort of quite, I wouldn't say dark pieces, but there's a piece that I've written called Earthquake, which is all about that waiting, or it's all about sort of a shaking in faith. And we used it at New Wine quite effectively once and not so effectively the other time. But we used it as a midpoint in worship to help people focus in and say, for people maybe who are experiencing crisis, who are struggling with their faith, we sort of had this earthquake piece, and then we went into some more other songs about sort of Jesus's salvation and Jesus's yeah, that connection and that love that you can have. And so, yeah, however you can imagine it, you can use it to engage. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? We've got a comment from Rebecca, which says, perhaps when English isn't a first language, the beauty of the words and rhyme come through and is appreciated. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, that's really helpful because it's an easier way to follow the story. I think often with spoken words, you're left with an impression, and rather than necessarily the fullness of the content, you're left with an impression of what's been said. And so the impression of as he hangs there, for me, I would say, is that because the emotions coming through and the feelings coming through, you feel like, oh, okay, like the weight of the cross, I think that sort of communicates that, oh, Christ, he's hanging there, he's done this for me. I don't really deserve it, but he's done this for me. And I'm so, that's like, yeah, the audacity of that, I guess you could say. And so hopefully that's the impression. And like, hopefully, yeah, you can talk about the impression you got from that. You won't be able to remember every exact word, but the flow, the delivery, the emotion that you hear in it will all communicate something. This is cool. Are there any other questions? No? If not, then what I want to do is, I'm going to take a drink of water first. But what I want to do is sort of give you guys the opportunity to do some writing and to get some stuff down. And so this is the way that I thought it could work. And hopefully you'll flow with me on this. And hopefully you were coming today sort of expecting to do some writing and to have the opportunity to put something down. But the way that I thought it'd be helpful to do this is we'll break into small groups, and then we'll give you sort of 10 minutes in your small groups to write something. And so if you've got something already, that's cool, and you might want to do some editing on that in that 10 minutes. If you've not got anything, then that's fine as well. You can do some, like, sort of take 10 minutes to get some ideas down, get some of your thoughts down, and then what we'll do is we'll share in our small group. So it's just going to be a smaller group of around 3 or 4 people. So you're not sharing with everybody, but share what you've written, and then we're gonna go back and then do some editing. So I'll come around with different groups and hear that, and then if towards the end of that we'll we'll bring everybody back in. Then if anybody wants to share with a whole group, they're able to do that, and then we'll work on some performance techniques as well. There we go, everyone's back now. Brilliant. Everyone back? Yeah. So yeah, hopefully you guys found that helpful, and hopefully you're able to connect with each other a little bit and to hear some different spoken words and hear some different ideas. What I'm going to do, I've asked Paul Carter, because I got to hear his piece. I would love to hear. I would have loved to have heard from more of you, but I'm just going to ask Paul to share. So he's written something just now, and you can introduce it, Paul. But and we're just going to do a little bit of work on delivery with using his piece as an example, if that's okay. I won't do any editing because I think it's rude to try and edit somebody else's work without having them explicitly ask you to do that. Especially because you're not connected with the emotion and feeling. But yeah, in terms of delivery, it'd be great. So yeah, but if everybody else could mute yourselves, and then I'll let Paul introduce his piece and share it, and then we'll make sure there's enough time to give you some resources and to ask any final questions. Bro.
Thanks, Paul. And you can be rude with me if you want. What are the wounds you carry? Where does it come from, that emptiness? Oh yes, some of it is obvious. Some of it is the ache we all feel, the hole that is left, the abyss whose edge we stare over. But how is it that you just fall and fall, when I have my eye on the horizon? Or so you think. What pills will heal? Where to find peace?
Brilliant, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone will agree that's a beautiful piece. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. And so what I wanted to do was just talk about in terms of the delivery. I think it's the key thing I would say for spoken word is that because you're at your, let's say how I put this, you're adding rhythm, aren't you? And you're creating a rhythm and a beat so that people can flow. And that can come in lots of different ways with the words. But one of the key things that I've found is the most helpful, the advice I sort of generally most give out is it's about your pauses and your stops. Like the space between words can be just as effective as the words that you're actually saying. And so could you read the first 2 lines again for me, Paul? Is that okay?
Yep. What are the wounds you carry? Where does it come from, that emptiness?
So I think, like, in terms of that delivery, and again, I'm not trying to insult your delivery, I thought it was great and the piece is great. I would slow that like right down and to almost the point that you feel like it's too much. I often, especially when I'm performing on stage, you'll have noticed I'm quite a fast talker anyway. And so, especially when I'm performing on stage, I always think I'm going to pause, I'm going to slow down to the point that I feel uncomfortable, and then I'm going to slow down some more. And then that usually puts me in the right sort of space. And so I would, maybe, what are the wounds you carry? I forgot. What's the next line, sorry?
Where does it come from, that emptiness?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do it again. What are the wounds you carry? Where does it come from, that emptiness? And so, yeah, hopefully you can see there's a, by those pauses, there's an emphasis on the different things. And so I've made the question what more of a question, like, and then so what are the wounds you carry? Like that comes together, like what are the wounds? Yeah, hopefully I'm trying to explain something that's just quite hard to sort of grasp, but hopefully you can hear it in what I say. And yeah, putting the emphasis, I put the emphasis on emptiness towards the end. Again, that adds something. It's quite hard to do live, and I'm not going to. I keep forgetting it. But yeah, hopefully that's one thing I would just advise you to do. And often what I'll do when I'm writing is I will put pauses into the text that I'm reading from. So I will put words in bold where I think there should be emptiness. So in that one, I would put a bold maybe on the what and the emptiness at the end, because I really want to make sure that I hit those words. And then I will add in commas where there should be no commas, because I want to make sure that when I'm reading it and when I'm delivering it, I'm saying, okay, I want there to be a gap here. I need to pause. I need to take a break, take a breath. And so you can do that however it works for you. You can put bold things, you might want to underline them, put them in red. But thinking about the delivery, and generally across the board, slow down. Just always slow down, because you really want people to be able to get a hold of the words that you're saying. And so yeah, hopefully that little bit of advice was a bit helpful for you there to sort of.
Yeah, really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, to get that through. No worries. But yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for sharing. We've got about 7 minutes left of our allotted time, and so I'll put my email address in the chat if anybody wants to get in touch. I want to make sure we leave a bit of time to pray, and we'll pray for Mike Warrior as well, who's struggling with his back. But my email address is there, and then I'm going to put some spoken word YouTube channels in the chat that you guys can access. So they're Christian ones. So one of them is by Dyer Woolridge, who I know who David. We spoke about him. So he's sort of, I would say he's a premier sort of UK spoken word artist that I've come across. So that's Spoken Truths film, and so there's a couple of his spoken words on there. And then the Passion for Christ movement is an American movement, but they do lots of different spoken words, and I sort of uncovered them 15 years ago. And so a lot of their stuff is quite a bit older. They don't post that much now, but there's sort of a large back catalogue of really great Christian spoken words. And so those are on YouTube, so you can watch them, you can watch the delivery, you can watch how they do things. But yeah, before we close in prayer, has anybody got any questions or anything else that they'd like to ask?
Hi, could I just ask, you said you'd used a new one. Do you offer seminars and things at the new one on this, or any of the other
I've not actually
conferences?
done new one for a couple of years.
Oh, right.
I've done seminars sort of. I'm doing one now. I've done them sort of at other
No,
points.
I know you are, but I was just thinking
Yeah.
it'd be great to get it out a bit wider, really, because I just,
Oh, yeah.
I had to rock up at church and hear, people speaking in a different way, and it would just be wonderful if more people could, sort of learn a different art of sort of presenting in church. That's all I was thinking.
Oh yeah, no worry. Yeah, no, definitely, no, yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think it's yeah, as you say, it's a different way of expressing yourself, a different way of connecting, and so yeah, it'd be good to share that more. So yeah, I'm open to doing new things. I'm quite busy, unfortunately, because yeah, I'm writing the master's dissertation as well, and so but anytime that I can find to do things and serve the church, I'd love to do that. Any other questions? No? Well, no worries. So yeah, as I said, my email address is in the chat, so you're more than welcome to shoot me over an email if there's something that you'd like to, something else you'd like to ask, or if you want to send me a piece to have a look at. I don't mind doing that. I might take a couple of days to reply, but I will reply. So just so you know. But yeah, I'd love to pray if that's okay. I pray for you guys and pray for Mike, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, let's pray. Father God, we thank you that you are the creator, that you love creativity, that you bless creativity, and that you've created us as masterpieces and as poems to share your love, to share your peace, to share your goodness, to share your joy in creative ways, Lord. And I pray for each of the people who've engaged today, Lord, in this seminar, Lord. I pray that for each of us, Lord, that we would be inspired and moved by you, and that we'll be able to use what we've learned today, what we've discussed today, to be a blessing to our church community, to your church, Lord, to those around us, and the writing that stems out of today, Lord, the performances that stem out of today, and the words that are created, Lord, and shared, Lord, would just be a huge blessing to your people, Lord, and through it you'd be glorified and lifted high and exalted. Lord, we pray for Bishop Mike as well. Lord, we pray for his back and for the pain that he's feeling at the moment. Lord, we pray that you would bring healing in that situation. Lord, your word says that by your stripes we are healed, and we pray that right now over Mike, Lord, that your healing hand would be on him, and that he'd be back to full strength and able to serve you again as he so joyfully does. Amen. Awesome. Oh, thanks so much for comments. Oh yeah, and as it said, as Mike put in, the session's been recorded, and so you'll be able to listen to me again, get back anything that you may have missed. But yeah, like I said, my email's in the chat. And if you've got any other
hello, Paul. I'm Sarah from CTE. Thank you so much for leading us today through this inspiring session. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Just wanted to give you a very quick plug for next week's session, the third and final webinar in our Art of Storytelling series, where we'll be looking at the art of media engagement. We've got PR expert Marcia Dixon and Michael Wakelin from the Religion Media Centre, and they're going to help us navigate how we tell our stories, the stories of our churches or our Churches Together groups, how we get the press and the media interested. So join us for that if you can, next Thursday the 16th at 12:30. But thank you very much again to Paul, and thank you very much to our colleagues at the Council for Lutheran Churches who've been behind the scenes doing all the tech today. Really appreciate your help as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.